like just for you to open control is just for a few minutes. That's
Okay, I
why.
should control yourself.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thanks. Thank you. All right. So it's a. So that's okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good morning. We are so sorry for starting this late. We are just trying to use title way for a couple of other people to join us. But as our usual act, even if it's one person that we have, we prefer to just start because sometimes it's part of Nigerian factor when people feel I'll come later, right? So, but we are good to have you here. And please, I just want us to exchange pleasantries. If you've not met any, couple of people that are here, just walk around, um, know each other's name. I'm going to ask you a question, right? At the end of this short networking session. So just walk around, ask for each other's name, know what they do. Because one of the importance of meetup is it helps you to get jobs. It helps you to navigate through differences in whatever you are facing in your career, whether as a data person, someone else is facing their own company. And I'm going to share a short story. I know one of my guys is going to be here today. His name is Daniel, Daniel Asogo. He currently works with Paystack as a data analyst. And my when where I was working before at Chicken Republic. At that time, I think things started getting busy, 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 and there was no way I needed to just move out. It was at this meetup I just met the guy, and I said, "Hey, Dan, how far?" We exchanged numbers, and at the time when he was leaving his company, he just reached out to me that Dave, I'm moving to this XYZ. Are you open for this role? And that's how it really works. When he was leaving that other place, and he reached out again, right? I was supposed to go there, but because of different factors, so I didn't want to move to that place. But when it comes to I had to share that story because when people come for meetup, you just want to be on your own. You felt I'm just learning. I don't want people to know that I don't know this thing. Those are the things that really come up. But please just walk around, meet one or two people, exchange pleasantries, right? Let's just have that short session before we go ahead with this meetup. You're not standing. What's the name again? Just walk around. Walk around, walk around, walk around. Exercise your body. What's my name?
Nice to meet you, but then.
I'm David. Again. You know me. Oh, how did you know me?
Is it not David? Not David Efiel, not David.
David Adejimo.
Yes, I'm seeing your posters.
Oh,
In LinkedIn, not Twitter.
really?
Yes, and I've been wanting to speak to you like
Oh,
physically.
really? We can talk after now. All right. I need to check time because. Okay. 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 Hey, big man. Hi. Good morning. Okay. Okay. What's the name? Is that from which state? Lagos. Oh, really? What is it?
I'm not a data engineer. I work in customer support. But I'm trying to see if I can transition to DevOps.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
What's your name?
David Adejimo.
Nice to meet you, David.
Yes, okay.
Data engineer.
Analytics engineer, data analyst.
So you're telling one person.
Yes. It depends on where I find myself.
Are you still from me home? You're fucking doing sex, no.
But don't worry, you're in the very good. Don't worry, we can always connect.
I'll collect your number. I'll take his number.
Don't worry, I'm happy to assist you. You're just transitioning to data analyst.
Yes.
Oh, which one are you using? Google Cloud. Okay. Don't worry, we'll just connect.
The only client I've heard of is one that is doing some Amazon Web Services.
Oh, AWS.
Yes.
Awesome. Big man. Don't worry, we still connect now. All right. Okay. So, uh, all right. So let's start. All right. So I believe we've all done our registration. Has that been done? Okay. So welcome to DBT Meetup, Lagos, Nigeria. Is that from you? Okay. Welcome to DBT Meetup, Lagos, Nigeria, and we are glad to have you here. So, what is DBT and why are we doing this? I remember when I walked in the other time, someone asked me, "How come that we are pushing DBT? Why are we pushing DBT? Is there a reason behind this?" And I have one of my, let me say, a guy here, David Effiong, Uforo. I know he's going to look at me. Don't worry. He's very humble, but please, anywhere you see him, I jack in. So he's a DBT champion, and I believe this has really helped him to do different stuff across the globe. And so DBT is a data build tool, and it's a tool that help you to do your transformation and do your data modeling. How many of us are data engineers, data analysts here? I know we have a couple of enthusiasts. Data analyst, okay. Data engineer, one. How many again? One, two. All right. Yes, I know. No, that one is sorted. It's sorted. All right. So DBT helps you to do your data transformation. Imagine you are trying to move your data from your production environment to data warehouse, because you know that as a data analyst, it is not best practice for you to connect to production environment directly. That is where you have your transactional data that is flowing in from either customers directly or from application. So you need to build a layer called data warehouse. And in that data warehouse, that's where the analytics guys connect their reports to whether they want to build. Depends on the um, visualization tool they are using, either Power BI, Metabase, Omni, or different tools that they could use, or Tableau. So it is not best practice to connect directly to your production environment. So you have to do a couple of transformation, aggregate that data in the data warehouse so that at least the analytics guys can make insights from that data. So in the process of doing that, you have to move your data. We are moving your data as is in production to what's called staging environment. On that staging environment, before you now move to what is usable, which is data mart, you need to do a couple of transformation there. Sometimes you may want to say, oh, I'm a very good guy. I want to use Python to get that done, or you want to build your pipeline around that. But what DBT helps you to do is to do that transformation seamlessly. That is, within DBT, you can write an SQL, right? SQL to build your data model, and then it make it reusable even for your analytics guys to connect anytime they want to build their report. So that's basically what DBT is. The transformation layer in that process, there's what's called ELT, which is extract, load, transform, right? So what does that transformation layer for you is DBT, and it's built strictly on, majorly, right, on SQL, right? So that really helps you to get your stuff done. And today, DBT is actually a company based in San Francisco, right? And they usually have what is called DBT Summit, right? It's coming up in September, between September 15 to 18, right? Let me to move on to the next slide. Okay, So we have DBT. It's basically they are based in San Francisco, and we have couple of meetup that happens every quarter across the globe. Some are currently being done in Brazil. I think Brazil had their own yesterday with Bruno, right? So this is Lagos, Nigeria, and we always do this. And over a period of time, I think we have an average number of 70 people that always gather for this meetup. And the major goal we are trying to do is to build a community where people are not just left behind. What we have noticed is that sometimes Africa is left behind. A couple of organizations, only very few organizations in Nigeria today are using DBT, right? And this is some of the tools that can help you to own your stack and even move beyond the local environment. And that's why I'm trying to push this awareness to people, even for organizations to leverage on it. It helps you to cut costs. They want to call DBT state. So today now, instead of you to always rebuild your model, it just pick the latest model and help you to do that transformation for you. So it's help organization to cut costs. If you are probably you work in a data environment and you just want to test this out, and the good thing about it is an open source tool, right? You can test it out even after this particular training. You yourself, you can go online. There are different courses that is available. There's DBT fundamentals. Look at it, explore. Let's keep building. And we have a community on DBT Slack as of today. So help me to check for that stuff. Yeah, I'm going to please go back. I need to talk about this. So, should in case you have your US visa here, let me see your hand. All right. So DVT is currently sponsoring some people for this conference. It usually happen every year. I think before now it used to be October, but this year they are running it between September 15 to 18. And if you have your US visa, really, you can attend. They are going to give you like a complimentary stipend. I think about $1,000, right, for just to sponsor part of the event. If you have your US visa, and please by faith you can apply for it as well. And it's always a very a great environment. It's usually being streamed as well on YouTube, right? Every year, if you go on YouTube, just search for DBT Coalesce. It used to call Coalesce before they now change it to DBT Summit, right? So if you check on it online, you will see things that mind blowing stuff that people are building. And that's why I'm trying to push this to say that, guys, there's so much more to be doing and for us to do, especially in the data community, right? People have been saying that data is a new oil, but yeah, data is a new oil, but it's when you understand the data, you know how to even torture the data to give you the right information. That's why you call it an oil. Because a raw information, a raw data is not useful to you until you're able to torture it for what you really want to get done at the end of the day. All right, so enough on that. And today, we have couple of seasoned professionals that will be speaking with us. We have Adedamola Onobanjo. She is a DBT champion, I think globally. Adedamola Onobanjo, David Effiong, and Okpayemi, and they are among the top 30 people across the globe that are DBT champion. That says these are the guys that at least they have pushed different stuff around DBT. So let's clap for them, please. Three people in Nigeria. I think it's very rare across other countries. So we have Adeda Molo Nabanjo. She's a senior data professional. She'll be speaking with us today. We have Isra Odiajo. He's an AI engineer. He will be with us today as well. And then we have Oguniro Oluwasijibomi. That's him over there, right? He will be speaking with us as well. Okay, should in case, how many of us are part of our YDP? So we're called Young Data Professional. How many of us are on YDP page? How many? Just one person. Bro, you're on YDP, right? Can I see your hand? If you're on YDP. Wow. So, yeah, one. Are you on YDP page? Interesting. Okay. So we have a WhatsApp page where, and it's very good for even enthusiasts because on that WhatsApp page, uh, today I think it's one of the fastest growing community in Nigeria. And this is not to put mouth, because some of the guys are on WhatsApp page. They are senior data engineers, and it's a place where you are open to ask questions, right? And there's even a mentorship program that is coming up. Am I correct, David? Mentorship program, YDP. Yeah, registration is ongoing. So, should in case you're an enthusiast that you really want to join, please, a link, you can just drop your name and you'll be added to the group. I think currently today we have over 2,000 people on the page as at today, and this is where people can always ask questions. So you want to start out as a data engineer, you don't know where to start, ask on the page. People are there to guide you, because we realize that sometimes when people have, and what we are trying to do in this community is say, let us all grow together, let us all build together, because at the end of the day, it won't be that, oh, David is high up there, son is high up there. Let us all build together, and you can join the community, ask questions around data, anything data, you can ask on the page, and you'll be rest assured that you get response. So there's currently a mentorship program that is ongoing. I'll try and get the link and display before the end of this meeting, right? So that at least you can sign up, right? Sign up for mentorship. It's just about 3 months where you'll be guided with the right approach to start out, even as a data person. All right. And also, we have good thing for us today. We'll be having a fireside chat with David Effiong on Going Global. And he's going to be sharing with us some of the framework that's really helped him to. He currently work with data culture, with a US-based company. He share with us some of these ideas that really helped him. And are there things that he has seen, especially in the Nigerian community, that a few people should leverage on, even to get as they are on their way to that global stage? That's part of the thing that we have for us today. If you want to join our DBT community Slack channel, this is a link. You can scan the community, you can scan the QR code to join the community Slack channel. Are we trying to scan? Should I leave it on for a few minutes? All right, all right, all right. Are we doing that? I'm going to do 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Do you all have the QR code? Bro, you're not scanning. Are you good? All right, that's fine. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. And should in case today you want to talk to probably like DBT directly, you want to talk to a DBT expert, or probably have a couple of questions you want to share, this is the QR code to talk directly to DBT experts at the DBT side. All right. So today let's just start out and okay, please just a minute. All right. So today we have with us Ogunere Oluwashidibomi, and is a lead data engineer at Sako with over 7 years of experience, comprehensive experience, and a bring wealth of knowledge in data analytics, machine learning, algorithms, and big data capture. He's a business intelligence, and also enterprise dashboard development processes. His skill encompasses a profound understanding of various database types, coupled with proficiency in research methodologies. That means that he's a researcher. As big data curation, manipulation, visualization, and programming concepts. He excelled in deploying predictive models, developing data pipelines, and implementing ETL processes, extract, transform, load, and solutions, effectively addressing diverse commercial needs. His contribution extend beyond technical prowess to include the ability to furnish strategic insights. So that means that he's not just a data guy, he's able to blend that side of business into the technical side. Identify correlations within raw data, synthesize qualitative information. A skill set leverage on advanced opportunity identification, drive process reengineering, and catalyze corporate growth for financial institutions. It's recognized as a bridge between business needs and technical solution, and he has basically successfully collaborated with various organizations, platforms, systems, and seamless integrating them with the latest advancement in cloud technology. Please let's welcome Oguneya Oluwasijibomi as to speak with us. All right. Okay, is it direct?
So I think we need to.
Oh my God. Yeah, for connector stuff. No, I think you might have to.
Just
It didn't come with it, right? Do you have it? Please check. Sorry, just a minute.
Am I just changing the size?
No, no.
Okay. Maybe not for you.
No, so you want to do a demo? Please, just a minute. You want to just quickly come up and stuff. Right, all right. So there's something that is sent to me. Please, just a minute. Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Well, this is a lot. Just consider me as someone also learning, right? I think that, especially in the tech world, right, there is always an evolution, right? There's something to learn. There's always something to get better, right? So, and I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here. I want to thank the organizers of the DBT community in Nigeria for giving the opportunity to also be able to present this. I think one thing I wanted to do was to use my system. Maybe I can do one or two demo, but maybe if you can be able to sort it out, then we can move straight down to doing the demo from my system. Okay, okay. So one thing I want to discuss today is something that I believe is quite important for us data engineers, and also, I mean, coming into the software industry, data analysts, and people working in the data world. And I want to majorly talk about data contracts. It's going to be a word that is more likely to come in much more stronger in years to come. And I think that if we kind of get a very good grasp at this point of what data contract is and how to be able to work much more effectively with them, then it's going to help our career and our journey in our professional work. So the topic is from data graveyard to operational backbone. Why the modern data stack needs contract, not just pipelines. I'm very sure most of us are aware of, or we could have heard the word data pipelines often. But what this is producing is we want to be able to ensure that whatever we are giving out, whatever we are presenting, whatever the software engineers are using in different shape and form, there is an established principle of how it's meant to flow. So I would say, you can go to the next slide. What is contract? I think that's the first part I'm going to go to. Then the second part is I'll talk about certain things we can, what are the issues that come up, right? What happens when contracts are not properly defined? And also, how can we enforce one? there is a particular diagram I had. I wish I can share it here. It's on my system also. Maybe I'll share it later on when I get it plugged in. Of what contract is. So the word contract is a word. I mean, just imagine you have an agreement between a person and a third party, right? Then you make a contract, and you people you're meant to keep that agreement, ensure that it's being enforced, and that the agreement stays viable, it's valid. So as long as the contract exists, then if someone comes in and does not go in with the lines of the contract, then the person is going to be somehow, based on the agreements made, the person is going to be somehow perhaps maybe penalized for it, or given some levels of rules based on not agreeing with the contract to work with. And it's something that also coined in and entered into the into the software engineering world. And what we see is that, especially in the full engineering ecosystem, you have what is called a backend engineer and a front end engineer, and it's majorly comprises of two different departments, or two different people, or two different teams working together to build a full stack solution, right? And one issue that comes up often is that you see that maybe the backend engineer wants a particular data from maybe the front end, from the client, or from anybody interacting with the system. And what is being supplied is not what is expected, right? And then there are issues that come up, right? And so there is this particular foundation, the Linux Foundation is an open source foundation. They came up with something called an open API contract rule, right? So that open API contract rule are different levels of steps on how to ensure that whatever is being maybe any what type of contract or whatever is being specified between those two different engineers, or within any other group of contract system in the engineering world, they follow certain specifications, right? Things like service level agreements, operational agreements, and things like that. Data tests, data quality tests, especially in data engineering world that we use. So I think that's just a very good detail of what contract is, right? Ensuring that teams, whatever data they are collecting within the team, within systems, right? Not just so don't just imagine it's team. It could be system. Maybe somebody is producing the data and somebody is using the data, right? Somebody is consuming that data. The agreement level has to be specified, because if somebody changes, maybe changes the schema or changes something within that data, then it can break the existing application. And we don't want that, right? We don't want the application to break up. We don't want issue with the application. And that is why data contracts are very, very important. Now, in the data engineering world, it is also getting much more prominent, right? We have frameworks and also operations like DBT now. DBT has specified rules of contracts you can lay down for modeling, right? You can be able to select, oh, these are the expected schema, these are the expected data quality tests, these are the expected level of agreements you should have in your data modeling in this dbt.yaml. For those that use dbt often, right? These are the things that we encounter day to day. But then, next slide. What happens when we are now working with other systems, right? And this is where it gets more important, because you know what we have in DBT is good for analytics, right? You have data in your data warehouse that is modeled, and you run your DBT run, things run doing whatever DBT build or all these different levels of commands to ensure that the data is properly modeled. And then you have dashboards, right? Your BI layer, where you present that information. So you have your data warehouse, DBT running, compiling, using any form of compute engine, and then getting out model data. Is that my phone? Okay, getting our model data that is going to be used from the dashboard level. And so this is how it works. But then, can you go to the next slide? Okay. So, but then, this is for dashboard, right? Something is coming up now. And if I ask everyone here, what's the latest? Now, it has been trending for a while, but what is the latest trending thing going on? We echo the word AI, right? AI is coming in, and we're having different. I mean, AI is very beautiful. It's making life easy for everyone. You can just change it if you have the opportunity. It's making life easy for everybody. You know, you can be able to sit down and build something up within minutes, right? And ensure that it keeps running. And AI can do a lot of other good things also. But then there are also very big issues with AI, right? Things are like guardrailing, you know, having some layers of enforcement in your system, some levels of protocols in your system, things like that are getting more and more, getting more and more popular now, right? If you learn of what happened to cloud recently, right? Cloud Fable came up, and the U.S. government said, "Oh no, that we don't," based on particularly maybe based on certain levels of rules and things like that. Maybe they didn't meet some requirements; they had to take it down. Then they brought a version, and there are a lot of conversations on Reddit and on social media that this level of Fable that I'm getting now is different from the one that I mean, when it first came out for, it was a day or two, right? So there are different issues. That means they've added some levels of guardrail, right? Things like that, just to ensure that it meets some level of requirement because these things are very powerful, right? And because of that, it is getting into the world of data also, right? Because AI works with data. In fact, it's not just getting, it has always been. If there is no data, there is no AI. That's the truth. AI is a refined data, an intelligent data, right? And that is why, as data people, this is a very big opportunity for us, data engineers, right? Because we are going to be working with data a lot, coming from different sources. But the problem now is that we are likely to, or more often, going to encounter systems where you have your data, stored somewhere, and an operational system is talking to it, right? Maybe an application is now talking to your data, right? I'm very sure. I think the next person is going to talk about that. You are building a chat engine that is talking to your data warehouse. You are building an application, a mobile application that is now talking to your warehouse, getting some level of information, right? I've encountered this in about two or three different companies where they have such levels. In fact, they have live application that is actually getting information from data warehouse, right? So that means that we are getting into that issue that I just explained briefly earlier, right? That partnership between the front end, back end is saying, hey, this is the data I want. The back end is saying, no, this is the what I have, right? And then there needs to be an enforced level of contract. We are getting into that level of issue also in data engineering and data modeling world, right? Because the backend engineer, please, if you have, I think there could be a session for questions. If you have questions, you can have something you're not clear about, right? I'm trying to go a very low level, but so we are getting to that stage, right, where you have operational data, backend engineers, communicating with your data warehouse, getting some information, building, models, chat agents, agentic pipelines, RAG pipelines, ML feature stores. You're also getting into points where people are building some level of, customer facing APIs, right? REST APIs and things like that based on your data directly from the warehouse itself. And we're also having issues like maybe doing some level of reverse ETL, which has always been popular, but getting more pronounced with that, right? And so there is need for trust, there is need for consistency, there is need for a formal agreement, not just assumptions, right? Because when you get to a situation where, as a data in the data world, right? Imagine you are working in a team, you people are 20, right? You have a lead data engineer and 20 others, and you have a data analyst in the team, you have data scientists, you have data engineers, and maybe data engineering, you guys are about seven, and you're working on maybe building some level of pipelines, right? Some are building some Spark pipelines, some are building DBT, and you are doing different forms of modeling, is versioned, right? When issues start coming up is you now start introducing AI. And then AI also comes in, is also doing some level of modeling, right? We have situations and scenarios where you start touching your semantic layer or your data marts and creating some level of informations that, or changing some schema, changing some things that will pass normally on when you run it on DBT, it will pass because definitely it's following the upstream approach, right? But then when you now, because there are now third party systems that are communicating with your data, what's going to happen is that it starts having different form of issue. Imagine you have a live application talking to your data warehouse, and like five or six different people are working on it. There's an AI engine running on it, and they are creating all manners of issues for your application. It becomes very important because it can literally break down, return 500 errors, which can literally break down the application, right? So we are coming into a contract system between the warehouse and also third-party applications, operational systems. And now, if you look at the existing system like dashboards that we use normally, you might not necessarily notice when maybe there are schema changes like that, right? Because it can degrade gracefully, right? Maybe you just notice numbers can still be accurate, your aggregations can still be accurate, but when it comes to APIs or applications, you start having different forms of issue, having no results, wrong types, missing fields, right? And things like that. For CRMs also, it can literally fail hard, right? Break down or give you corrupted information because CRM are also very, very specific about data they want. For AI and ML systems, maybe agentic systems, it will also degrade. It will degrade quietly. What you can notice is that the data you are getting, maybe you are feeding it with a RAG agent and you are not getting the latest results, or the results you are getting when you chat with the agent is returning some level of, corrupted information, right? So these are issues that are coming up now. These are issues that are coming up now, and DBT word also falls within this ecosystem, right? Finding that and bridging in the gap between your data communicating with different levels of operational resource or operational tooling. So, like I said, just talk about data contracts before we go into how we can be able to. One of the ways we can be able to evade something like this. Okay, yeah. So, just like I mentioned, imagine now you have a DBT system, a DBT repository, where you have some level of semantic informations, right? Maybe a customer 360 or dimension .sql, having everything built up, and you've already run, and everything checks up well. And then you also have an API communicating with it, right? Let's imagine a maybe fast API, popular for Pythoners, and you're using an SQL model, and you want to ensure that if an intern comes into this semantic layer and maybe changes something, maybe changes the data type or changes the naming and things like that, and everything passes and gives green on DBT, right? You run a DBT run, everything compiles, and then you push it and you merge it to maybe your production environment. And this API repo is not updated, right? And the API is talking to an application, maybe a microservice. The microservice is most likely going to crash, right? Why? Because there needs to be a contract definition within both different environments, right? And this is what, this is why it is very important, right? And there are many, many solutions that are coming up across this level. People are building different solutions just to ensure that, the level of agreements between service levels or between data contracts, maybe DBT pipeline, or any form of other engineering processing pipeline and your APIs are working fine, right? And the biggest problem might not even come from the person using the tooling. Imagine you just chat up your AI agent, maybe it is cloud, and you said, okay, I want to build a semantic layer on top of this modeled data table, or I want to model down a mat and ensure that it works fine, it's proper, you add your context or tool engineering. They have different buzzwords now, right? Context or loop engineering and things like that. And you do everything right, and then it touches something here, right, which is not being checked, and you have an application layer talking to it, it's also going to cause problem, right? And so there has to be a something in between this level of layering that checks the type of data, right? Checks the naming and other conventions, ensures that it passes on perhaps the CI level, the pre-commit level, or maybe a normal bash run scripting, and everything goes fine, right? And the reason why something like this I relate to it a lot is because I've done two different projects where something like this came up, right? And we had to communicate to a data warehouse, do something, communicate to application for some level of analytics, customer facing analytics system for the application in one of them. And this was an issue, right? You can go to the next slide, right? Just like I mentioned, you have your data engineer building maybe a customer lifetime value. Everything passes, everything goes green, and then you have maybe a fast API or a Django or a JavaScript level of API level, and because of no contract specification between those two different agents, right? It gives a very wrong signal, right? App breaks down, and there are issues that come up along the way, or maybe dropping node results and things like that, right? And so I think one thing that, and I think that's one thing I wanted to share for people that will most likely come into situations like this, maybe when you are working on a project, and it's something that I use currently, right? And it will really help for people going into that situation. I think you can go. So I think I've mentioned this earlier, right? Okay, fine, this is fine. So the missing layer is to ensure that it compares both parts of the pipeline, the DBT model side of the pipeline, and also the consumer, and to ensure that whatever is entering the transaction between both of them is in sync, right? It's able to alert you, oh, there's a problem here. What you are trying to build and model into your data warehouse will most likely fail, right? It might pass here, but it's most likely fail the API level and break down your application. So why don't you ensure that as you are pushing this, the backend engineer or the software engineer that is working with the API is also alerted about this, so he could be able to update the model blocks he is building to fit into this context, right? And this is where the gap comes in. Right. Next. So, and there is a tool, a data contract validator tool. It comes in to solve this problem, right? Because we're getting into these operational use cases, right? And this tool is also meant to spread across different levels of group, not just pedantic models, but to go down into even Rust layer, because we're having a lot of applications built in Rust now. Rust layer, API, services, JavaScript, right, and things like that. But this tool works very good for for pedantic models validating with your DBT and your modeling tool. Yeah. So how it works is that you just have to install it, right? And so what you do here is that when you install this tool, what you can be able to validate and run it locally or run it on the remote repository level, right? So what it does is you could specify the parts of those two different areas, right? You specify where your DBT project is, the path where it is, and also the path where your API, maybe a fast API or Django or Flask or wherever. And if it is a remote repository, you can also specify that, right? And then run it at any point in time. And then automatically, it's going to do a validation for you and be able to know, whether there are types that are failing, whether some changes are made in this DBT layer that this fast API also has to work on, right? Remember, if you push this, even though it is turning green on the CI level and you don't validate it here, it's going to break your application, right? So, and this, how it works is that it uses something called the catalog.json for those that generate documents on DBT. And what it does is it gets vital information from the DBT modeled architecture. It gets very vital, good information from it, and it compares it with what is on the API level and is able to get very good insight. Okay, these are the issues that are likely to come up, right? So it can warn you about issues and or it can even come to enforcement such that it can block your CI level, right? And tell you that this CI fails because it has not validated. Now, definitely there will be many other tools that have also come. I mean, are likely to come are also coming in this realm, but this is something that works live and works for me. So I would definitely want to recommend that. And something that I think as data professionals we need to start paying attention to because it's something that I've been seeing a lot of projects, especially with people building AI agents and communicating with different data levels of data resources. Okay, next. Yeah. So just imagine you have a pedantic model, a base model, and you had there you specified all the different levels of your columns, your ORM notation columns, right? User ID, your email. Just imagine maybe e-commerce, right? E-commerce, you have orders, you have the customers, right? You have what else? Products, right? You have ratings, you have transactions, right? And let's imagine this is a user profile, and then okay, so let's imagine that you can. No, you can go. Okay, so let's imagine you have the user profile with this level, and then you make some changes. So imagine that on your DBT layer, because it's talking to, don't forget, it's talking to your data warehouse, right? So let's say on your DBT layer, you change this from user ID to a customer ID, right? And then you implement your run, you push your CI, everything runs green, and then it's on production. But this is still user ID, and the application is using it, right? So there comes an issue because something is not in the DBT model, is seeing it, right? So what this does is that it's going to give you an alert and tell you that, oh, this is a failure zone, right? This is critical because if you push this, it's going to break your application, give you some level of recommendations on what to do, and gives you guideline on that. Now, this works on pre-commit level, this works on CI gated level, right? When I say CI, the continuous integration level, when you want to push it to your repository. So this catches the error and it avoids all the issues that come up with it. Next slide. And yeah, just like I mentioned, you can run it on the bash level, install it for Pythonians, run it in it interactive, and you can run your validation system on it, and it gives you the validation to be able to go next to the PR level. Yeah, next slide. I think. Yeah. So I mean, different kind of issues can be found. First, it can be able to validate, you know, what is exempted in the information, right? It can also be able to validate the schema. So maybe you could maybe cast a column, or maybe from the source, it's expecting something, maybe an integer, right? And then in your API level, maybe you use something different, right? Maybe you use the string or you use a data type or something like that. It can be able to find those issues there and flag it as a mismatch and tell you to correct it before you push it to production. And also, it can it can ensure that whatever you are running locally and whatever is on the remote repository are in sync, right? Don't forget, you can run this locally and you can run it to communicate to your repository also. It's like so. Like I put a word here, I said almost nobody gets a deploy on the one dependency adheres to C, whether the warehouse still produces what the API promised, right? This is what the solution does. So now, under the hood, I would have loved to present that, but under the hood, what happens is that it kind of creates some level of contract terms, right? When you run it, validation, it checks on your remote repository, checks the contract definitions on the API level, also checks the contract definitions on the DBT level, and then it compares both of them, right? So if it notices an issue and it's saying that the contract definitions on the DBT level and with what is on your fast API level are not in sync, then it notifies you. That's just the high level overview of what actually happens, right? But this can literally save your application or save whatever you are building talking to your data warehouse. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to thank you. I think I can open up for questions if you have any questions along this line. I think you can go to the Git repository and you could check out. It's open source, right? So that means you can contribute to it. You can. I would love contributions, really, because there are a lot of things that we can still do. We can implement many things that can make it big, right? And I think I've spoken to a number of professionals, and even in the DBT world, and a lot of people like the tool. There's a post about it that people gave different comments, and you can also work with that. So thank you, and I think that will be my.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Please, do you have any question? No question. Okay.
I just have one question. Like this uh, library is one that you built, right? Okay. Okay, that's good. That's what I wanted to ask.
All right. Thank you, Ability of Lagos. Is there another stuff?
Thank you. And all this is still new to me, but I think I learned one or two things. So from what I get, it's like the thing prevents the any data that is being read before it gets to the final state. It calls it like it sees the error. I want to understand that's what the tool is supposed to do.
So when you say any data, you mean from the model,
Yes, yes.
Yes, it vents it in that sense, right?
Okay.
Vents it, looks at it, right? Checks it out, ensures that it's properly defined. And it looks at the definition properties, right? And then compares it to your and then it compares it to your operational data, right? the backend, right, and ensures that whatever interaction or transactions between them, they are met, right,
Okay.
before you can be able to publish what you are building.
Okay. Does this apply to all applications, all Android
So
applications?
so this is specifically for now is I think it's something that works with DBT layer and your backend applications, right? This one is particular to Python backend, right? But we also solutions for I think Node.js, TypeScript, and things like that, which is or almost also in place published, right? But this one is tested proven, right? So that's why I can present this.
Okay. So DBT, is it a new tool or it has been there? The DBT that you're talking about, is it a new tool or it has been there?
Activity, the data view tool.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's I think like you mentioned, right? It's ensures you can be able to do your data modeling with it and ensure that you're able to follow the proper contract definitions and also levels of policies, right, in your data modeling system, right? So it helps you to build your data in that sense, right, and model it properly.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. You have a question? Okay, so please, we just take the last two questions and we need to make it snappy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for this session. So my name is Abdul Mujib Abdul Salam. So my question is, how do you define the guardrails, and what if you are trying to update your semantic model? Right, maybe you are trying to change the naming or the headers, right? So does it allow maybe um, maybe if you want to bypass the validation, does it allow it also so that you can update your semantic model, since that's what you are actually trying to do?
Okay. Okay. Good question. First one, how is the guardrail? Does it allow guardrailing, right?
Yeah, like how is it defined?
Okay, how is the guardrailing defined? So I would say that low level, what it does, for example, is something that you can also do manually, by the way, right? For example, if you build, let's say, a fact table, right? And then you have this level of fact informations, and then you have, some you build maybe a YAML file for that, where you have, the table name, you have the columns, right? You have the names of a description for each of the columns, right? You have your data test, right? Maybe you do some kind of null tests and things like that in YAML file, right? That in itself, it's a contract and agreement level. Why? Because you have some quality information, it's quality test there. You also have definitions. You have defined your data, right? So that exactly is the same principle behind this, right? So what it does is that for your models, especially for the ones that are going to be interacting with the application, right? It creates a contract, right, in a very defined order, in the specified order. One of the issues that we might likely have with this is that you have to also ensure that it works fine with what is on the API, right? So what it does is it builds a separate contract, for the DBT layer. Looks very, if you look at it, it looks almost the same with what you actually have with your normal definitions, a YAML file, right? And then it's built also a contract on your API models, right? It builds a contract for that, and then it compares both of them, right? Because now that they are in the defined and ordered file, it compares both of them. So if you used user name in maybe your DBT, or somebody changed it to customer name, right? And the API is still using username, right? Then it sees that there's a problem, right? Because if you push this, it's going to break somewhere, right? There'll be some responses that, it's going to affect the application, right? So it notifies that and, alerts the person. Now, you can definitely bypass it. Second question, right? You can bypass it because there are flags you can add. And there's something that I noticed. So I had this system I was working with, and we had our DBT models, talking to an actual fast API service. But then we were also saving some other important informations in the raw layer. We were saving some information that was coming from a Kafka producer, right? Was emitting because it's something like calculating impressions and things like that, where it was populating from a service, and we're saving it on the raw layer. That's not coming from, and we're also interacting with that information on the API level, right? So we added levels of exclusion. So if you look at it, I can't demo this, but if you look at the PyPy documentation, right, you would see all those specifications, right? How to bypass, how to add exclusions, and things like that to ensure that it doesn't, maybe in case. But I won't advise you to bypass it, because why would you bypass it? If you bypass it and it breaks your application, then it's not the best, right? So I think for most use cases, you should just leave it and fix it. What you can do is, in your dev environment, right? Maybe on the CI level, the dev environment, and then you are notified that, oh, there's a problem here. Then definitely communicate to the software engineering team, right? Okay, I want to make these changes, because they do it for us also, right? They make schema changes, right? That breaks up our own model pipeline, right? Because of all these different issues. So they also are now relying on what's in our data warehouse, right? So you can ensure you communicate with them so that they update it, you run your test again, it passes, then you push on to production, something like that.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I mean, I think you already answered one of my questions, which is, and I looked through the code around whether you support maybe a Java API or something else that's not. But I can see that it's strictly for
The Python
Pydantic
environment,
models
yes.
or fast API and the likes. So the other question I had was, it's this thing looks to me like you are now pushing the you are enforcing the contract more on the producer side, where the producer is doing something with DBT, right? I mean, you mentioned cases where software engineers, when they do most of these things, they don't tell you, right? They just go ahead and push their changes. You find out when your pipeline is broken or if you already have your own validation. But this is more like pushing this approach to the person who is producing the data that something else is consuming, which is fine. My question is around, you're using GitHub specifically. GitHub. So the other repo, which is the destination or which is the consumer end, needs to be on GitHub. What if a client is using GitLab or Bitbucket or some other kind of source code repository? Do you plan to have support for that? And another thing I was thinking is, what if it could really be there's API agnostic? Like it doesn't really care whether you're using a Pydantic model or you're using something that could maybe fetch you an API schema, and whether that API is built on with a Java backend or with your Python backend, it really doesn't care, but you can still do that validation. Like those are just some random thoughts.
I mean, very good suggestions. I think that's why it's open source somehow, right? Because I think one good thing also that can be considered, I mentioned something about the Linux Foundation, right? They created this open API, special standards, right? So, and I think as many backend engineers that want to enforce it, they can be able to do that, right? And I think that's something that really helps. I think Fast API has these docs and things like that. Yeah, so it's a very easy way. I think a very good one. And this can ensure that it's more robust, right? Not just Pydantic models, but can go into many stuff. So yeah, a very good suggestion there. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Okay. Do you have any other question? All right. Thank you so much, Lucy.
All right. Please, as many that you can try to Google it or check it on a browser, star it, add issues, like make suggestions, and let it grow. And yeah, thank you all for
Thank you.
listening. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. So that's actually a great one because data contract is something that's even is very important, right, as part of your process, right? So and it's already built a great stuff on that end. So we'll be proceeding to the next to our next speaker, and that's Adedamola Onobanjo, right? So let me to open her profile. Hold on. She's a senior data professional and a DBT champion. I don't want to go into her profile, but she has over 7 to 8 years of experience and BI manager, and she has built a lot of stuff when it comes to DBT. She'll be speaking with us today on metric layer, and let's welcome her. Please, a round of applause.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Uh, 7 to 8 years of work experience is crazy. I literally just started. Okay, please let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
Set the timer.
MacBook. Oh, yeah. So your MacBook is 3 minutes over.
Okay, while they're figuring out tech, I will take this time to introduce myself. My name is Adi Damola Onobanjo. Like he said, I am a senior data professional with about 78 years work experience. Um, Trying to think about that when I started and how long I have been in this field, and he's actually right. It's quite scary and impressive, I'll say. But yeah, I have experience working in e-commerce, fintech, and B2B SaaS, even health tech, actually. Yeah, so I've worked in quite a number of industries. Basically, my job entails turning messy data into numbers that people can actually use, make sense of, and also leading teams that do the same. Working out like BI strategies for companies, for tech companies. Yeah, I think at a glance, that's what I do on a daily basis. Also, a DBT Labs champion, uh, past Igniter. What else can I say? I think that's mostly everything you need to know about me. Um, Thank you. So today I'll be talking about metrics integrity by default. I would love the topic to be on the screen. Okay. Yay. Okay, thanks, David. Okay, so today I'll be talking about metric integrity by default. And this talk is basically going to be story experience slash lesson based. Um, yeah, I'm not going to do any demos, just walk you through why it's important to have systems or to configure systems that support metric integrity, right? So it's not an afterthought. It's not something that comes up after a mistake has been made and someone has called you out. It's something that is baked into your system. It's something that is baked into your processes. It's something that you can't escape, basically. So it's like, let's see. I don't know. I don't know that everybody like has the same morning routine, but I'll say for me, when I wake up, one of the most important things for me to do before I begin my day is shower. So yeah, without that, I don't think I can like function throughout the day. So yeah, it's just like one of those things that you should take as a norm, not as something that comes after. And of course, that is important, not just because you're trying to build trust with your stakeholders, or you're trying to be a shining star at work, or you're trying to solve problems, but because it's something, it's like a foundational principle, basically. And with the likes of tools like DBT, it's not something that comes as an afterthought anymore. It's something that you can actually, like I said, bake into your processes and your systems. So yeah, let's go. The story I will be telling you today is about a company I worked with or I consulted with, and how we kind of almost made a mistake by sending a wrong number to management and getting them to make bad decisions with this number. I'm assuming everybody here knows that at the end of the day, solving you're not just solving problems or doing things just because maybe your stakeholders like need, I don't know, most your maybe top 100 revenue deriving customers, or because they need data sets or data points that will enable them build, I don't know, credit scoring models, right? At the end of the day, the most important thing or the end goal, after all the work that we put in on a daily basis, is for your stakeholders to be able to make decisions with the data that you clean, or the data that you model, or the data that you analyze, right? um that's basically the end goal, for them to make decisions. So however it is they're using it, as long as the information provided is right, should be the driving force behind the work that you do, right? So this story I'm going to tell is centered around this number: 1 in 5 customers ever monetized. Basically saying that roughly 4 in 5 people who signed on never became paying ever. Now, if you work in companies, or if you work in a company or have worked in a company whose goal is to make money, well, all companies actually, their goal is to make money, but like maybe their vision for the year is to derive the most revenue that they can, then you know that a number like this will scare them. So in 5 people, you have just one that is monetizing. That's quite a scary result. You can move to the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So the like I said, I'm telling a story, right? Presenting that number in a session, in a meeting, right, indicated that the company needed to invest in retention, keep the people who already monetize from leaving, right? If you have just 1 in 5 people monetizing, then you want to make sure that you you are able to fix as many, or you're able to keep as many of them as you can. And yeah, a lot will be put into making sure that this goal is achieved. So money will be spent on marketing, for instance, to retain customers, probably hire a growth hacker, whatever the case might be. You definitely invest like resources, especially if you're a company that has, to make sure that you keep the small subset of your customer base that is monetizing. So in this case, the story was because 1 in 5 customers ever monetize, the decision to take here, instead of doing this, would be to fix activation, right? The 80% who never monetizes are the bigger prize than churn. You want to be able to make sure that these guys turn to paying customers, right? From non-paying customers, you want to be able to ensure that they turn into paying customers. To be very honest with you, when you look at like these two scenarios, you'll understand that retention only ever works on the fifth of users who already pay, right? Activation is for the four fifths. Like if you've worked in maybe marketing analytics, you'd understand how hard it is to swing your activation numbers, basically. So a lot of people would usually want to fall back on retention and not activation. Next slide, please. So I'm going somewhere. Okay. So in this case, like I said, this is a very big decision that will swing a lot of decisions in this company, and that actually did swing a lot of decisions in this company. So the growth hacker being hired, that conversation, or that became a conversation, it became a an option on the table because there was something to be fixed based on this number, based on this insight that has been shared. And sharing the insights, like we all know, is not the hard parts. Analyzing, slicing, and dicing the numbers is usually not the hard parts, especially if you know your onions, like if you have experience doing that, if it's something that you do on a day to day, and someone comes and says, "Oh, um, can I have like these numbers?" And in less than 1 hour, you already have a response for your stakeholder. Especially in this era of AI, like it doesn't take time to write code anymore. If you're scaling, if you're a company that's, or if you work in a company that has scaled to the extent where a lot of your processes have been automated, then you won't even need to spend so much time getting the numbers through to your stakeholders, or you probably already have them visualized somewhere where they can just go and pick out the numbers that they have. However, believing the numbers, believing the results, believing the insights that have been shared, um, believing it's enough to act for your stakeholders to take decisions is the hard part, right? Especially when money is now part of the decisions, more resources, time. Yeah, these things just, it just becomes harder when you can see that the insights I have provided, the work I have done is leading, like it's driving results, right? Or it's driving decisions that are being taken. You want to be more intentional about the work that you do. So you're not just, oh, I have been asked to do this. You're jumping to analyze and you're giving them what they need. It is the thoughts, the logic, the critical thinking that is behind your analysis. That is where the hard part comes in. Now, if it is something that, if this work or your requests are things that are maybe very cumbersome, or you are looking to move towards, like looking to build like futuristic warehouses, futuristic systems, then you would want to make sure that everything is in place um, where when you finally deliver a result, be it by yourself or your users interacting with whatever it is that you've built, you want to make sure that it is right, right? Um, so, like I said, that is what this entire talk is about, not the metric that you're, not the analysis that you're doing, not the work that you're putting into doing the, and well, that is also important, but the right to trust it, not even just from your stakeholders like end, but also from your end. Next slide, please. Okay. Um, so moving to why metric integrity by default is important, and how relevant it is to the kind of work that we do, and the space that we live in right now, and how you can go about achieving it, basically. So with tools like DBT, of course, we're here today because of DBT. And it's one of the very few tools that has like end-to-end functions, end-to-end tools that support metric integrity by default, right? with tools like DBT, your definitions live in models. Um, if you use the likes of, well, if you use any SQL language, any SQL program, it's easy for you to write a query, write code, and save it somewhere. Even if you don't use, you can save it in a notebook, you can save it in a notepad, in even a Google document, anywhere, right? And you can always refer to it when maybe something has changed. So if someone is asking you, oh, I need to know the number of users that churned in the last 2 months, then you can always like go to that model, and rather you can always go to that file and maybe tweak something in your workflows. Um, or if you have a function that is maybe defining dimensions for you, or ingesting data from a seed file, for instance, you can always like tweak those things. But if you're going by, or if you're living by the principle that metric integrity should be by default, then you will want to build a system where there is like a straight pipeline. You do something first, and then it moves to the next level before you eventually get to the end result. And you want to make sure that everything is automated, basically. So if in your seed file, for those who don't know, seed files are basically like CSV files. You can create them and use them as lookup tables. So for instance, if you're working with a table that has transaction statuses, that table has maybe 4 to 5 transaction statuses. In a seed file has already been generated, right? It doesn't change basically, except you go in there and you change something. So maybe you're using it as a lookup table in your transactions table, right? You're providing number of transactions per status to your stakeholders. You run your seed file, it connects to your transactions table, you get like a count of transactions by open, pending, successful, failed, for instance. If in your seed file you haven't, there is a new transaction status that your engineers, your product team have not informed you about, and then your results might be a Google Sheet or it might be a dashboard, right? Has caught on to whatever it is that you ran, and then you see your open, pending, failed, and then you see maybe no, and you're seeing like a huge chunk of transactions there, or you're seeing a very strange status that you don't understand. And in a lot of cases, since these things have been productionized, meaning that they've gotten to your end users, uh, your CEO, for instance, is the one that is seeing no 1 billion 200 and or 2042 users, and he's confused as to what that means, right? And that is tipping the scales of whatever decision he has to make that day. That becomes a problem for everybody. It becomes a problem for your CEO. It becomes a problem for you, right? But if you're going by this principle again, your definitions live in models, right? Not in a dashboard filter where someone has to go and start, I don't know, filtering out all the statuses that they need before they get the information that they want. Not in someone's head. So you're not the only one that has the logic that needs your model to run, or that will get your stakeholders the right results. Rather, it is version controlled. So when there's a change, like the change to the seed file I just mentioned, it is caught there. It is also tested. So before your model runs, for instance, with metric integrity being by default, if you've written a test, for instance, I think the last speaker was speaking about tests. I heard something about that. If you've written a test, for instance, that stops your model from running when something that it's not familiar with comes into the model, then that will throw an error, right? Your model doesn't run, and then your CEO doesn't have to see 2 billion no, and everybody's running helter skelter. So there is one source of truth also, right? There are not multiple, there's not one SQL file here that you have to query maybe when you want to look at last year's numbers, and then you've written another one that you have to query when you want to look at this year's when you want to look at this year's successful numbers that someone in products team uses, and then there's another file that someone in the finance team uses, and another one that someone in the marketing team uses. And then when they get to a meeting where they have to make important decisions, everybody is fighting because the product manager has gone to add a filter um, that they're not supposed to add, but they thought was necessary. And so they've added it, and now the numbers are looking different from what the finance person is sharing. And now, in an important strategy meeting, everybody's looking confused, right? Decisions that are supposed to be made there and then have to be postponed. Yeah, okay. Okay. So with the story I was telling, um, there were three layers to it, right? Remember the story about 1 in 5 users monetizing. Um, so following this principle again, the right step would have been one, to define who is a monetized user, right? Somewhere in your model, you define who a monetized user is. One rule, one single rule in the base model, intermediates, whether in your intermediate core, your staging layer, whatever layer you want to define it, um, for who counts as paying, right? And now, because in your source model, your staging model, your intermediate model, you have defined where you have defined who a paying user is, and then everything that is upstream of this model carries this definition. So if another model that say the product team uses is dependent on this one, it doesn't basically have to change what that definition is, because it already picks from your single source of truth, right? Um, and then in another layer, you have where you define who an active user is, who a churn user is, and you state these transitions. These state transitions are defined once in Git, right? So it's version controlled, it's reviewable in a pull request. If someone goes and changes something there, maybe someone has a bright idea about, oh, churn users should no longer be those who have been dormant for 30 days, 60 days, and then they just put that number in, or someone fell on their laptop and six changes to nine, whatever the case might be. As long as it's going through a version controlled system, which is one of the key tenets of the metric integrity layer, then it's not something that gets into production, right? It's reviewable in a pull request. Whoever it is that approves your pull request sees things like that and is like, oh, why is this thing 60? I'm not going to approve this. Go back and change it, right? So nothing wrong, no errors basically filter through to your production system. Um, then the last thing is, or the last layer is, it's being tested, your model being tested. So you can do all these things, right? Expecting certain results, but then you have to make sure that what comes through, because at the end of the day, you can't control the data that flows through to your pipeline, right? Like I mentioned with the transaction status thing, a new status can come in. If you've worked with product engineers, you know how unruly, for lack of a better word, some of them can be. They make wonderful decisions and they don't inform anybody, right? So if you don't get these things, if there are no guardrails, yeah, I think that's the better word to use. If there are no guardrails, then decisions like this that are out of your control, and trust me, there are a lot of decisions as someone who sits in the data space that will be out of your control. In a lot of cases, we're often like an afterthought in product engineering deployments, cycles, right? They don't think about you until something has broken in production, something has broken in a dashboard that someone important is using, and then everybody's like, oh, why is this number not correct? And then you find out that it's due to no fault of yours, right? But as if you want to be successful, if you want to keep up with the trends in today's industry, then you have to do things that will enable you stand out, right? And to be honest, testing is the bare minimum. But like I said, with tools like DBT, that kind of have all these things in one, right? They're all packaged together. Then it is kind of like easier for you to do. But if you're not, also realistically, not everyone is exposed to tools like this. However, these are still principles that can be followed, right? In whatever system, whatever program you're using, you want to make sure that you go from one step to the other step to the next step. So, like I said, with testing, all of these definitions that you have created, your one rule for who counts as a monetized user, right? The definition ships with the data test. So a silent change breaks the build, but not the board, right? Um, I want to give an example of two tools that treat testing in different ways. So there is DBT, right? With DBT, if a test fails, in the orchestration layer, you can set up alerts. So you know when something has failed, your model has failed to run, and you can also sync it with your communication channels, or you can send emails to your stakeholders, for instance. And so you catch like these things. They don't even have to reach anywhere, but at least you're aware that something has happened, right? Everyone is aware also that something has happened. Another tool that treats this differently is Google's data form. With data form, you are not, it doesn't have any native alert system. So you can't actually tell when something has failed until you go into the tool and you check your execution logs, right? So it's sort of more like a manual process where people are not automatically informed when something has gone wrong. You have to go in and check that something has actually gone wrong. But yeah, at the end of the day, these things are all put in place to act as guardrails, right? So that bad data, incomplete, non-fresh data doesn't filter through to your production environments. Next slide. Okay. You can also say, sorry. All right. So I just want to quickly walk through um I just want to quickly walk through the bug in my story that almost broke or that almost led us to making the wrong decision. So, and this is just for everyone to have or to be able to relate more to why these things are important, these things being metric integrity, not being an afterthought. So, if you're not familiar with what a cohort is, it's basically like a subset of, in this case or in this context, a subset of customers, right? And because we're looking at monetization, a cohort was defined as the first month that a store earned revenue. Each store would carry an entry tier, and then monetization is measured per cohort, right? So again, cohorts defined as the first month a store gets revenue, not when they sign up, but when they make revenue or when they derive revenue for the first time for the business. And then the entry tier is, of course, the store, right, making revenue. And then the monetization percentage is measured per cohort. So the entire conclusion of, oh, how many stores monetize or did not monetize, or how many stores churned in this cohort, or how many stores did not churn, rests on just one question, just one simple thing that can collapse the entire model, can collapse the entire decision process, can shake things up. And that question is, where does the entry tier come from? right? How does a store qualify to be in this cohort? Something very simple, something that seems like it's straightforward, but in a system that has no guardrails, you can have very, very bad leakages. Next slide, please. Okay. So the silent error here that caused the wrong number or that caused the wrong insights to be shared was the entry tier came from the store's table or the store's dimension, which only holds stores. So the store's table, the store's dimension only holds stores that exist, right? And when they sign up. So churn stores by this first definition had already been dropped. Now remember that this is information that was actually shared with management to make decisions, to make very, very important decisions. So this was actually based on this entry tier definition, never actually entered the denominator. So your monetization or the monetization percentage was skewed just by this error. Monetization looked healthier than it was, right? We had baked in a survivorship bias straight into the definition, just with this small thing that doesn't seem like such a big deal, but is a big deal, a very, very big deal, right? In a case like this, nothing new entered into the system, like a new status, for instance, that reads null when is not null, right? That's something that can easily be caught. Someone sees that null and is like, oh, this is not supposed to be here, and they draw your attention to it. But in this case, everything ran, the query ran clean, the test passed, but the number was still wrong. And this is one of my, when I first started writing SQL, I think this was one of my biggest worries. The fact that you can write your code in many different ways and you get different results, right? The only way that you're sure you've gotten the right results is if you use, of course, the right syntax, your query is written properly, and your logic is also correct, right? Next slide, please. Okay. So before, i.e., when the entry tier was not right, we had a store's dimension with survivors only. The entry tier, of course, that depended on this, and then the monetization percentage, which meant that monetization looks healthier than it was. But then after, remember that we're looking at monetization, so people who actually derived revenue. You should not be looking at a cohort like that from a sign up perspective, but rather from a money generating perspective. So the entry tier changed from this to that, and then the monetization percentage, of course, changed. And this is, we landed on numbers that we could actually act on, right? Next slide. Okay. So, like I said earlier, how can you catch these things? Just by having the logic in your head, knowing what is right, knowing what to do. You read your SQL. Joins are very tricky. So get suspicious of your joins, trace the column back by eye, hope you were paying attention. These are things that you can do by hand, right? Yeah, these are things that you can do by hand, just normally. But with a tool like DBT, and with something called column level lineage, it exists in both DBT Cloud and Fusion, then you're able to comprehend, like it's able to comprehend your SQL for you. It traces every column across your entire diagram at compile time, and then if there's any dependency on a wrong source, right, it catches it before you run. So in that case where the entry tier was dependent on the store's dimension, if we had prioritized metric integrity and baked it into the system, then our column level lineage would have been able to catch that, oh, this entry tier column is taking data from the wrong data source. It would have thrown an error and would have been able to trace it back and make the right decisions based on the error that it would have thrown. But that did not happen. So you can see just like the difference between these two things, how much time, how much trust it would take for you to do this by hand compared to knowing that, okay, my tool is actually doing this for me and I can run it in seconds and get the right results because everything has been defined in the back end. The tool is picking up what has been defined and is acting based on that, right? Um, the discipline that lets the team catch this by hand is becoming the default behavior of the engine, right? So all of these things that you have to do, that someone has to do for you, right? After you've written the SQL, you tell someone else in your team to look at it and make sure that it's right. Everything the tool is doing for you, you don't have to basically depend on people or yourself to do these things. Next slide. Okay. So I don't want to dwell too much on other ways that numbers or the number went wrong in this case because I hope that everybody has gotten the full picture as to how like things can silently go wrong without you even knowing that something has gone wrong, and decisions are made. In some cases, you don't even catch the errors before decisions are actually made, and then you're not getting any results, and you're wondering why you're not getting any result or you're not getting the right results, not knowing that it's due to something that has been written that is not correct. Next slide. Okay. So where this is going, we're moving away from static analysis, right? The likes of Fusion, the likes of Cloud validates every query in the project before anything runs, right? A whole class of these errors get caught at compile time, not discovered in production. It's better for you to spend hours debugging why your model is not running than for it to run and it's running rubbish. DBT Core, am I hearing myself? Okay, that's now open source. So that two error engine where you have to run something here and run something in another place is ending. So yeah, it stops being an enterprise only story. You can have, it's basically smooth sailing from now. And it's open to everybody, like I said. You can test it out, try to make sense of these things, even if you don't have experience in analytics engineering yet. But if it's something that you're looking at, somewhere you're looking at going, then it's a tool that can be leveraged to practice, to put metric integrity by default into practice. It's very important. Yeah. Okay. I think I've spoken. I've run out of time, so I don't want to dwell too much on how Fusion works. But you can basically do more research to see like how it moves through a pipeline to ensure that the metrics that have been baked or that have been defined run correctly. The tool didn't find the insights. That's the end of the story. Is the tool did not find the insights, and it's why I could believe it, right? It's why I confidently shared a wrong number to my stakeholders that almost drove them into making the wrong decision. But if you're working again with something that you know has you've put like so much thought into, um, and the foundation is basically very strong, it contains all these different definitions that you know are very integral to your model, are very integral to the insights that you're sharing, then you have rest of mind that okay, my metrics that are being shared, my numbers that are being shared are believable. Yeah, I think that's the end of my story. That's the end of my long speech, right? Thank you. Yes, is just time for questions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Do you have any question? Any question? Do you have a question?
My question is towards the insight side. So, all things being equal in the good world, we define our metrics in one place. Metrics are good, they are fine, they are clean. Glory be to God. So, but when giving out the numbers, how do you handle giving out just the metrics versus the insights? So, do you just trust business so that the business stakeholders to see the numbers on the dashboard or wherever and make the insight and decisions they need to make, or beyond the numbers, you give them the insight and then tilt them towards the decision they should make?
That's a whole nother discussion. But I mean, it depends on the level of maturity of your stakeholders. One, there are people that can work with just the numbers that they're seeing. There are people that have to be tilted or steered a certain way before they understand. And in today's like very fast-paced world, you want to be able to ensure that you are catering to both sides, right? So if your stakeholder is asking for just numbers so that they can go ahead and make their own decisions, then you give them that. But if they're looking for actual insights, then you also give them that, and you can all these things can be baked into like your one tool or multiple tools. One important thing that can be used in this case, and just like in context of this topic, is a data dictionary. For instance, so if you publish those things alongside the dashboards or the ad hoc numbers that you're publishing, and these are things that like your stakeholders are already very familiar with, then you know that okay, this particular column or this particular bar or this particular pie is referring to this, right? Yeah, hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, a round of applause again for her. Let's clap, please. Okay, okay. Yeah, we'll soon be House of Air. So the next session, we'll be going to the next session, but just before that time, we are here for DVT, and we'll be doing like a short game, right? So please bring out your phone, and we want to play a game right away. Don't do this to me. Just a minute. Coming, guys. Okay. Just before that, I think let's do it this way, because our time is fast spent. We'll come back to the question, but let's have Israel to speak, and after that we take the um, game. Is that fine by us? So now we have our next speaker, Israel. Where is it? I think he stepped out. Okay, so just a minute. We have Israel. Israel will be going up next. He's an AI engineer, and he has a great number of experience when it comes to AI. He'll be speaking with us on AI and DBT, and he will be coming up next. So let's just have a round of applause for Israel. By the way, I mean, he made a great sacrifice to be here. He traveled down from Ibadan to be here just this morning, and he has been a travel for over 4 hours. I think it's worth celebration. Thank you.
All right. Is it morning now or where are we? I'm trying to get myself together. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we've been having a great time, and of course, thanks to the organizers for the privilege to be here. So all my guys in the house, from Ability down to Marga David, and of course the entire team. Thank you for the great work you've been doing. So today we're going to talk about something, and of course thanks to all the speakers. I've been following us online. It's been amazing. Thank you for the great work. So again, before we close, so more like I'm doing the closing prayer, right? So before we go, let's do some takeaways, right? So beyond the prompt, we're going to be talking about powering your multi-agent rack systems. with DBT semantic layers. Of course, we can move. Yeah, a lot have been said, so let's just okay. So quickly, we look at why do we need to look at these concepts. Then we'll talk about what the semantic layer solution looks like. Then we also a little bit talk about graph transfers and query engine. Also, we look at MCP multi-agent integration. We also check how the performance is doing based on the queries that we've saved. And finally, we talk about the security and strategic roadmap. So why is this important? So I know a number of us, or when we're working, some of the crises that we have over time is why data schema SQL generator fails. I think that's one of the big issue most of the time. So the primary shift shows that when LLM query directly from our data, they face the crisis of context simultaneously, so that they can also interpret from the user intent and also translate the SQL against your physical schema. So that's one of the challenge that we see over time. Our direct schema most time queries pattern fail because of the following reason. One is that the model must guess the table relationship and they use the ambiguous column names because we possibly not create, made available some of the metadata that will enable it, to understand the context. Also, most construct complex multi-table join, on the file. Also, it leads to incorrect calculation and also breaks some of our execution runs. And of course, there are also issues around minor prompts, yield completely different from our SQL. So let's look at these two tax problem. One, most of the time we have issues around interpreting our intent. So yeah, it tries to understand, the user analytical question. And the second part of thing, it tries to also translate that to your SQL. That it tries to map to exact physical schema. Also, trying to join some of these tables together. And of course, one part that we've also all be familiar with because we are all possible prompt engineers is hallucination, right? So it's trying to guess the relationship. It's trying to produce, broken, SQL. So what is like a universal solution to this? What the solution will primarily be will be to insert what we can call a centralized, semantic layer between our AI agent and also the physical warehouse. That is where we are storing our data. This semantic layer, before you go, please. There's still something at the bottom I want to stress. Because so the semantic layer most time is acting like the translator framework, wherever you're working, that maps your raw tables into the version that you can control specifically for the business use case you're working on. A key note to take is that standard RAG is not always sufficient or enough, when you work. And that's why concepts like semantic layering will also be like an advantage or something you should add on in your building. So semantic RAG mitigates virtual inaccuracy, but fails at structured analytical queries. Retrieval misses. The context window can also be missing, and that's some of the problems that we might also face. If we can. So let's look at some of the metrics, in terms of performance impact. So strategically or in metrics, let's look at base query. So for standard DDL, that is definition language, it does well for about 16.7%. And for semantic is doing, about 42.2%. And that tells us that the model does about 3 times more better, to be accurate. And of course, when we have cases of multi-hood joins, for standard DDL, we have about, very less value to that. And the semantic, we have about 35% to that. And this shows that the transition complete failure to functioning queries. Of course, for aggregation, the number of them, so that I won't bore us with these statistics, is just to tell us the measure of impact when you decide to follow this pattern. And of course, key insights, doing a snowflake deployment, a cross function does one LLM doubles content revenue by treating invoiced and bill as synonyms. And this, these are some of the things that we will also need to always redefine in our works. Also, duplicate customer count by treating customer and contacts as distinct entities. And of course, this will mean different thing based on the business scope. Please let's move. Then let's talk about one of the solution we are providing, which is the semantic layer. Here we talk about the metric flow, the YAML methodology, and the hub and spoke architecture. So this is what this layer will look like if you decide to use the semantic layer for your work. So the first thing to take note is that this is like a translation framework between our AI agent and also the physical data warehouse. So from the LLM, which is, I mean, your natural language query, you have the semantic, which can either be a GraphQL or JBBC or MCP, which, I mean, from the business point of view. Then you have a module that handles the metric flow engine. And of course, finally, you have the cloud warehouse, which could either be Snowflake or BigQuery or any other resources that you decide to use on the project. So how does this work? The first layer is translation. Here, it maps raw tables to version control business concept, and we have the version controlled space whereby the metrics live in your Git alongside transformation definition. And of course, we have the single source of truth, and this is where all consumers access one consistent KPI that you have defined. And finally, you have the stabilized terms where the agent query with business term, not just about the physical scheme. And I remember I had the last speaker also specifically talking more about the business impact, which is going to be like the goal when we're working. So the downstream customer, for instance, you have your AI agent, which is the LLM orchestrator that you want to work with. Then, because a number of us might also be business intelligence users and developer, so you can use Looker or Tableau, as some of these interfaces for the work you're doing. And of course, it could also be that it's your notebook, your Jupyter notebook that you are using. And finally, you can also build a chat interface where you're able to interact, ask questions, and within the scene, it picks up some of this data and is able to also present that for you. Please, let's. So the core engine, which is the metric flow. So the metric flow here basically reads logical YAML definition and dynamically compiles optimized SQL that is tailored into your warehouse, the way you have defined it. It also replaces your logged in business intelligence metrics with version controlled reusable definition. So some of the things to do when you are defining your metric flow starts from your entities. I mean, I know a number of us know what some of these things are, right? So you're trying to tell us what these entities are, what are the makeup of these entities, so more like the table for many of us at the SQL level, all right, of course, and of course the features that are available in that table. So you need to define them. What are the primary keys? What are the identifiers? Those are things you do here. So you define, very key information about your table, so that your LLM is able to also understand the context at which you are providing them. Then we also use some measures. So I know a number of us when we are working, we do that a number of times, especially for many of us who are to work with these business intelligence tools. All of these are things that will help you get aggregated results, get information that are defined. It's the same thing that you need to also define your aggregation, the sum, your count, your average, your count distinct, depending on what kind of operation you expect to be carried out for you. And also you have the dimension. And here it talks about the categorical attributes like the time span, the boolean, is it true, is it false, used to be group, your slice, your filter, your partition aggregated metrics to be able to do some of these tasks. Of course, so four metrics types, just to also emphasize that again, you have the simple, here it points directly to a predefined measures like the ones we've mentioned, sum, count, aggregate, and all. Then you have the ratio, whereby is the division of your numerator by the denominator with whichever filter that you also decide to work with. And of course, your cumulative, which is the rolling windows, for example, is it for 30 days? Is it for 60, which is approximately almost 2 months and plus? So it depends on what you're trying to calculate, depends on what you are trying to look at. Of course, the derived, which is the one but for many of us in the AI engineering space, we call that feature engineering, whereby we are trying to create a new feature from already existing. And of course, these are some of the things that goes a long way in what we do. So critical requirements in this phase of work, one is global namespace. So we we should be sure of the way we are defining the names so that we don't have issues of mismanagement. Of course, we all know when we're defining like a variable, as it were, right? The patterns we define, for example, commas underscore total underscore sales, the ways we define our variables so that there are no global namespace issues. Then our calendar day span, and of course, we have our hot join limit too. Please, we can. So this is what a typical, YAML file for this kind of tax will look like, where in the model you are giving all of the details. You're also talking about the metrics you want to use so that it learns from these patterns and also helps the kind of result that you get at the very end. So from here, just being explained, we have the transaction ID. And what does the transaction ID does? It also tells us that it's the primary key. It defines the grain of the table, unique identifier for each record. While we also have the user ID, of course, in this case, the user ID will be a foreign key because it's coming from an already existing table, but it's also trying to use that to locate an individual. Transaction date here is a time dimension, all right? So it needs to pick that period, all right? Follow a particular pattern, whether date, month, and year, whichever, that kind of flow. Gross revenue here is met. We need to know that this was calculated from already defined, already available feature. Then you have the total gross revenue, which is simple metrics. That is, it exposes the end user points to the gross revenue measures that you must have defined. So all of these are basically concepts that helps your LLM to learn from most of your structured data. Thank you. Okay, so we have the graph transfer and the query engine, which is where the AI engineer plays out in this kind of environment. So here we have a concept that we call the join trap prevention. And what causes this most time is aggregated parent level measures alongside detailed level dimension in a single join. For example, if we look for orders, for example, and you have one to many, so this shows a double many to one join sequence. And what this basically shows as effect is the parent measure is multiplied by detailed record, artificially inflated result. And most of the time, if you look at the kind of result that you get in context like this, you might need to use some of this filtering to get correct result so that it's not modeling or ambiguously putting your result as one. So some of the metric flow prevention strategy to take note of. The first one is the semantic graph representation. So here, the model is known as nodes, and these nodes, we also have the entity that are directional edges. This engine analyze entity types to calculate series SQL paths for us. Then we have the fan trap, which we can also call the split execution. Here, the split into separate queries, depending on the task you're carrying out, whether you need some information from the user, then you also want to combine with the sales or with the revenue. So depending on, the kind of result that you want to do, this concept is going to work well. But there are two trap types. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the fan trap and we have the chasm trap. For the fan trap, we have too many to one join in a sequence. And for the clap trap, we have two join conveying on just one parent table. And for analytical use, consequences here, you have parent measures inflated by detailed records. And for chasm trap, we have the casual product between leaf tables. And the strategy here is going to be we separate the outer join, because at that case, there might also not be so much that is combining these tables together. Okay, so for query APIs, where after you have been able to segment this, we need to have our AI agent also, but this time around we are using a GraphQL API, or you are using a JBBC API, and of course, whatever metric flow that you want to use on the task, and finally, you also connect it to the source of the data, so that is null A or your BigQuery. So if you look at some of this context, just to give you an idea of what we are saying. So for example, we have our submit query. The goal here is to get query ID. So here we created a query, and the metrics there is the total revenue, and we are grouping by the metrics time and want to get the query ID for that. So when we put these results, we are going to basically get the status of the SQL in the JSON result. And the same thing, if you want to use a Python pattern that many of us are used to, we use the library called DPT Cloud Client to be able to connect. You pass the necessary parameter, then you write your query to get the result. So from this, we see that the API capacity, one, has the ability to create query, also is able to pull from your query, then is able to also do a dimensional paginated, that is, if you have to go into different pages to get those results or get those information by what you have grouped by, then we also have the entity paginated. So here we see that the query the semantic layer directly with whatever sigma using the template function in our custom SQL buses. Again, we have the MCP and the multi-agent integration. So here, we are basically talking about this agent and how they interact with a tool like the DPT that many of us are users. So the MCP is, like we know, is an open standard for interfacing LLMs with other external tools, APIs, or data schemas. Also, it eliminates fragile custom APIs integration by providing a unified protocol. So what would the architecture look for? Like when you're working with DPT MCP server, the first is which LLM agent are we working with? Then which DPT MCP also do we want to connect with? And which discovery API do we need? And finally, the SL. If you look at the code, before we move here, these are basically some of the information that we might need to get. But of course, you need to pass which one do you decide to work on in the project. But key capability of this one is that one is it can connect with standard integration of any of these agents, from cloud to cursor to custom agents, even without custom code. Also, it has access to the full project discovery from the model to the source test and tools. It can also trace upstream for you, and if they are also downstream. And of course, you have the LangChain native, which has the capability to also connect whatever information you are providing and also integrate with whatever LLM agent you are doing. So just having as a system that joins them together. And finally, you have the semantic layer query. So it's able to also give us these metrics through our semantic layer. So why is this important? Because before we can build an NCP, every LLM to integration requires what we call a custom API wrapper. But NCP standardized this because it has one protocol. You can also have many agents, and also you can have as many tools as also possible. So the DPT MCP server exposes your entire DPT project as a tool. So this is what it looks like if you want to run this yourself. So the first thing is, like we mentioned, we're using the LangChain NCP adapter, and from there we are importing multi-server MCP client. And also from our LangChain agent, we are also using the create agent. And we also created an object called client, whereby we are using the DPT. The command is DPT MCP server is what we're trying to access, and the transport is stdio. And of course, if you want to assimilate this with your agent too, these are the ways to call each of the tools, to call the agent, and the expected results. So from this flow, we can see the user query, just trying to give you a context. Let's say what the user wants to know is why the gross profit margin dropped last week. Now, this is just an information you just want to, a lot of things has to be done in the entire process. So that means we have to find the tool that needs to answer such kind of question. So Engine calls our get model parents, that is which model parent have we defined, and then which one is in the image that is able to give this kind of mapping that we are expecting. Then we look at the X check of this particular model that we are calling to be sure that one is verified or is able to also give the expected results. And finally, we get the metrics query, which is the one that displays the result after it has tried checking some of the information that you have passed and look into whatever data warehouse that you are also connected to, then the agent itself is able to display. So here we see that the agent does not just query. One, it will investigate. And how does it investigate? One, it maps your upstream dependencies via the lineage that you have connected to. Also, it validates the data freshness and the quality. Then it looks at the queries that matches the exact metrics that you have defined based on what the user has also requested for in the context. And finally, it's going to synthesize that into a human readable explanation. Because at the end of the day, it should be able to explain after it's able to access the tool through the agent. Then finally, after each of these processes are already involved, we talk about the performance and production. And I think this is one of the big parts in the AI world right now, because we are now deploying models. Then we want to check how is the model performing, then how is the result of the model. So as much as all of this that we have mentioned earlier are happening behind the scene, the major part of things at this point is then we must be able to check that this model is performing well at the production level, not just localized, because things can work well, on our local system, but then how is it doing on the cloud? All right. So the three key things to take note at this point is how the model is being saved, the query rather is being saved, then how the cache works, and the export too. So save query combines the metrics that we defined the other time, the dimensions and the filter into a named version control asset paired with the DPT scheduler. They populate pre-computed caches or materialize as physical tables. So this is what it looks like in saving your query in the YAML definition. So the saved query, what are the information that goes into this? The name is weekly revenue summary. What does that mean? The description, weekly revenue by region. The query parameter, it has the metrics. What metrics are we working with? We're working with total revenue and gross profit margin. Then we're also grouping this by the metrics time week and also the customer region. And of course, we're picking these metrics for a particular time span, which is 2024-01-01. So the result we're going to get based on whatever it is that the user have asked, we follow this pattern. And of course, the result we're going to get is going to also be a human-like response. So not this pattern, this is for us because we are the one making this to happen. But for human, it's going to be able to explain all that has happened in simple text. So key commands, like we have from what we have, the DPTSO export, the DPTSL export or if export will be for if a particular table, export all will be for the bulk of tables that you want to export. DPT build dash slash, you are selecting the model that you have built, then the downstream save the query. Same with the environment variables. The production benefit here is one, it reduces latency, that is how is able to compute, then lower the cost, how much that you need to also pay for using those tools. Agent routing here, the agent route to pre-aggregated tables, and consistency here means that, of course, once something has been defined, you can always access it through caching. Then for business use case, enterprise use case, for example, we've called the name Loy. Here we have the unified semantic platform. Here let's consider 500 legacy BI application into unified semantic platform via MCP integration. So let's eliminate data silos and inconsistent metrics. For instance, we have a leg app concentrated as 500 and just one platform to handle that. Then at the end of such experiment, we have the query accuracy to be about 92%. And let's say we have the hallucination reduction about 70. So this and the time for this, for the result shows about 25 to 5 minutes. So what this basically tells us is if we follow the semantic layer, one, our query becomes more accurate. Two, is going to reduce hallucination. And finally, our runtime. Thank you, everyone. Let's just
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Please, do you have any question? Okay. Victor. Sorry. Came past them.
All right. Thank you very much. I mean, that was very interesting presentation. I wanted to confirm first the
There's
benchmarks
no
you
thinking.
shared around performance when you introduce like metric flow and maybe when you're sending you're allowing your MCP just go query your warehouse for you or your agent rather go query your warehouse for you. Are those like DBT established benchmarks? Is that what like DBT has from their test?
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
okay.
It's just from their resources I put that up.
Okay, okay. Wanted to confirm that. Okay, I didn't see it there just to be sure. And my next question would be based on your own use case or your own use cases, how, I mean, I could go ahead. I personally have not had to set up like metric flow or anything for a DBT project, right? But maybe I've set up a couple, let's say an MCP that is talking to my data on any specific warehouse. But what's the real difference between clearly defined DBT documentation, maybe you have it in a vector store or something that is properly stored, and your AI agent can consult that before querying your data with whatever tools it has. How what's the difference between that and me having to introduce like a very clearly defined semantic layer with my metric flow? I've just looked at it for the first time. Like I knew about it, but I've not used it. But how do you rate them? Like if on a scale of 1 to 10, what works better?
Okay, yeah, thanks for asking. So my thoughts from my experience, I think introducing this kind of layer also will help. And if you look at my final words, primarily, and I think the first thing you want to reduce, especially at the production level, is latency, right? You want that to be minimized because the truth is certain things will work, and we cannot, like I said in the beginning too, we cannot completely also check. I know a lot of rack system also works in this kind of cases very well, right? But then from this kind of introduction, it shows that I mean, and of course, many of us also trust the kind of tools that DPT is also releasing, right? A lot of their libraries, which I know that we have a lot of people here who are also contributors to some of these things. So I think it's just more from what worked well for you, really. But then it's also that you should be open to what also is globally used, right? So that's like going to be my own take on that. It doesn't mean that the normal way we use the rag and they just expose things and consume them. But then we also want to be sure of which of these tools will work in production, right? That should be like the core of what you are paying attention to in a time like this. So that's just going to be my take home. But from also some of the people I've worked with, and I think one of the things that also stands out is issue of hallucination, right? It's able to also reduce it and also time consumption. These things also happen in some of these things too, right? But because I mean, it's just something that like a preference thing that at some point, but really it doesn't stop the other way of doing some of these things as far as you are sure that things are working well at the production level. Yeah.
So just to add, so just to add to what is said, and I think I have one question, but I can't remember. Defining metrics is just like having like a standardized way of okay, this what we are tracking and stuff like that, and this is what it should look like, right? So when you are trying to get a particular metrics, you know what you are, all of them have been defined in your semantic layer in your dbt project, and you can just query it directly, or probably your agent just use metric flow to just fetch that result instead of having into thinking about how do you get this metric. So just go straight to the point without having to like overthink. And he talked about time consuming, that it reduces the time for agent to actually think about how do I even get this metrics. It just since everything's already defining your semantic layer and you already feed that into the agent workflow. So the agent just queries metric flow to get that metrics for you and send the answer to you. So that makes that is usually a tense in that essence. Well, I've already forgotten what I wanted to ask him, but then probably when I remember, behind the camera, I was asking. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Let's clap for him, please. Thank you. All right, all right. So our time is fast spent. We're supposed to be here at max by 2 o'clock. But before we go into that, I want us to take this just couple of questions, like a game. So if you are the winner, I think I have something for you. If you are not the winner, you go home. So I have a game for us, and also please we'll be sharing food, and after that we are going to take a group pictures. We plan to do this in the next 10 minutes max. We should be out of here. 10 minutes, yeah. So I was trying to sign in. 9 players. We are almost 50 here. Let's start it. I have something special for you. You said? Well, no. What happened? Ah, okay. Can you help me ship food? Don't, just, just help me. All right, all right, all right. Once we get to 25, I will start. We have, yeah, 16. And also, please, if you have not registered, kindly register before you leave at the bar. And I know some of us might be first timer here. And one of the things that I said earlier on, there's a community called Young Data Professional, and there's an upcoming mentorship program coming. At least for if you're an enthusiast, you really want to even find a way to navigate yourself through um, data world, right? So there is an upcoming mentorship. Please, at least if you're on the group, you see all those links and apply, so that at least you can be part of this great stuff. People are giving out their time for free just to teach people over the next 3 months to help you navigate through the data world, right? It could be complex, especially if you don't have someone guiding you through the journey. Realize that today you are seeing different tools, right? You are seeing AI. They are saying AI is taking over your job. And like, guy, do I still need to be in the data world, right? So you need the right mentorship. Please register after this so that at least you can join the page as well, and people can always guide you through. All right, 16 players. That means that people are not ready to play. Okay, let me start. What is it? Okay, let me check. Great, 21. Let's look who the winner will be. 1, 2, 3, start. Eh? Okay. I think the timer is too much. The timer is too much. This question is too much. The timer is too much. I should continue, right? Okay. Oh, don't do this. What happened? I don't know. This question 3. Okay. All right. The timer is too much, I think. I'll do like 10 seconds. Yeah. Okay. It's supposed to be next one. Okay. How about me? All right. Please, if you have not gotten food, can I see your hand? You have not gotten food? Do you all have food, please? Okay. All right. Is it Mentimeter that is doing me like this? I don't know how to use it. Is it Mentimeter that is doing me like this? And I've done fastest was. You have stopped. Have you voted? Oh, okay. Ah, the time is too much. I'm sorry. It's making me. Yeah. Okay. Is it supposed to move by itself? Please, hello world. Okay. No, I'm looking at my timer decision. It's too slow. It's too slow for me. It should be at 10 seconds. Sorry. Uh, my time is actually fast, man. So I think I'll just do five. I actually have 30 questions, so I'll just do five. Because guys are waiting outside. What's your thoughts? They have a meeting there too. Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm just going to do 10 questions because I regret my timer decision. It should have been about 10 seconds, but I used 30 seconds. So I'll just do 10 questions. Then whoever the winner is going to get a gift by the time we get to question 10. So who is the winner at the moment? Who is Lewis? Yes, sir. Okay. Cool. Should have used. Okay. And also, please, if you care for extra food on your way out, after we take the group picture, there's going to be a meal outside. Let me see. Okay, let me do two more. Question 7.
Actually, it can be dot
Let's go. What?
It can be dot
Do you want to confuse them? Okay. I'll just do three question marks. That's all. All right. Last question. I will move because they have been vet set by 2:30. So I need to park. I need to park. I think we need to have speakers. Let me call one of my guy.
How many questions?
So I'll just take one more. Let's take the let me to ask this is David F1 that David the other guy that should listen to call it so that I can take pictures. Okay, I think we'll stop here. Whoever the winner is. Hello world.
Hi,
Who is Hello world?
anyone here?
I don't understand. Who is who is who is AZ? Yes sir? Yes now. So I'm giving it to AZ. Uh yeah, just meet me after this. Thank you. Yeah, it's can why will you be all right. Thank you so very much. We are so grateful to have you. And our next meetup, we are going to be announcing it. That will be sometime in September after DBT Summit. Please just right about now. We need to take group pictures, and we'll be out of here. They have an event shortly. We are even overshoot time. Please, thank you. Sorry, please, all the speakers. Let's quickly take a group picture. Then please wait and let's take pictures. If you care for extra food after now.